Hello and welcome to a new, hopefully reoccurring series for this channel called What If? Nobody is going to believe that I came up with that before the new Marvel TV show came out. Too slow, too slow. This fresh feature is all about changes the Wheel of Time TV show might make to characters and storylines in the books. Personally, I find adaptation fascinating. The process of going from a written medium to a visual one is a constant compromise of give and take, or more simply put, cut and keep. When Robert Jordan sat down to write the series, his only limitation was his own imagination. When it comes to a TV show, there are a myriad of practical problems such as budgets and actors' schedules that force the creative team to make changes. Not to mention certain elements might be left out to make room for something new that'll surprise even the most hardcore book fans. Unsurprisingly, major spoilers ahead in this video for all of the books pretty much. So today we are going to be answering the question, what if you could only have 7 Forsaken? Why limit the Forsaken, you ask? Well, a large section of a TV show's budget actually goes into paying their actors. The more high profile an actor, the higher the cost. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm hoping to hear some big names drop in connection with the Forsaken. And these famous faces are likely to have busier schedules. As anyone who's a fan of Amazon's American Gods adaptation will tell you, keeping conspicuous stars in the credits gets harder with every season. We're barely a season in and already the Wheel of Time is announcing recasting. So from a money and continuity standpoint, it makes sense to reduce the number of major villains. But the question is, who do we cut? Who do we keep? Who, if we can, do we combine? And how does this all affect the main storyline? In trying to answer these questions, I considered 3 main factors: how unique a character was compared to the other Forsaken, their relationship with our other main protagonists, and overall impact on the events and schemes leading up to the last battle. Straight off the bat, I think there are 2 Forsaken who the idea of cutting is as impossible to imagine as an ogier folding over the corner of a page to keep their place in a book. The first is of course Ishamael/Moradin. I don't think anyone is going to argue with me on this one. The Dark Ones chosen play such a crucial role in the plot that the idea of cutting them would cause so many holes in the pattern that it would begin to look like a trypophobic person's nightmare. Just as Rand believes Ishamael to actually be the Dark One at the start of the series, in many ways, the Forsaken is the embodiment of the transcendent evil for the audience. He's the right-hand man moving the pieces. He's the Dark One's voice putting his master's plans in action, and without him, the Dark One wouldn't really have a physical presence on the TV show. The second Forsaken that absolutely has to be included is, of course, Demon Dread, because, well, he's the one who shuts Garwin up for good, so that's that. Moving on. You might be thinking there's another Forsaken that clearly should be on the keep this character if the showrunner wants to live list, and that is Landfire. And of course we're keeping Landfire, it goes without saying, but we're not keeping Sindain. Whoa, before you hit that dislike button, please hear me out. I really liked Landfire at the start of the series. Her secret identity as Selene sliding into Rand's DMs being dream messages, was an excellent introduction to a character we've heard so much about. But that's kind of my problem with Landfire. I always felt like her reputation in the past was more compelling than her actions in the present. The daughter of Night, one of the strongest female channelers from the Age of Legends, Luce Theron's ex, and not to mention one of the researchers responsible for creating the Boar, releasing the Dark One, and bringing about the War of Power. But the Landfire released from the Seals just spends most of her time trying to seduce an adolescent reincarnation of her former lover. And while this is an interesting dynamic when there's a chance Rand might succumb to her charms, after a while it becomes clear that he's just not interested. This is why the timing of Moraine tackling Landfire into the Redstone doorway felt perfect to me. And if cutting Landfire means cutting Moraine's awesome sacrifice, then there's no way that's happening. The most engaging quality about Landfire was that you never really knew whose side she was on. It felt just as likely that she would betray the Dark One as she would Rand. This is why when she's resurrected as Sindain and forced to obey Moradin through a mind trap, that she loses the most appealing aspect of her character. So we're cutting Sindane, and this frees up an opportunity for Landfire to be resurrected as another Forsaken. It's like reusing a teabag. It's good for the environment. There is one Forsaken who plays a much larger role in the latter half of the series, and that is Semirog. Semirog is probably the Forsaken I found the most terrifying. She is often considered the most depraved and sadistic, the mistress of torture, able to cause intense pain with a brain surgeon's precision. All qualities that make Semirog a great character in her own right, but also traits that could add to Landfire's character if combined. So how does this affect the story? Like I said, Semirog doesn't have a major part to play at the start of the series, so events pretty much play out as they would normally until Moraine's sacrifice. The Dark One then resurrects Landfire as Semirog, who goes on to infiltrate the Seanchan, leading to the confrontation where Rand loses his hand. Again, events play out the same, with Semirog being captured, humbled by Cadsuane, eventually freed by Shadar Haram, and then the infamous scene where she uses the domination band on Rand. Forcing Rand to kill Min seems like the kind of vengeful act Landfire would totally do. So in my mind, this still works. Rand using the True Source to break free and burn Semirog out of the pattern with Balefire can also stay, as having Sindane wandering around during the last battle felt like a bit of an afterthought and one without much payoff. In my opinion, this would be a far more dramatic and fitting end for the character, if a little earlier. Now, if you're still watching after that controversial start, let's have a look at some of the boys. Balal, Samael and Ravine must have been bunk buddies in the Dark One's prison or something, because they all have the same idea after they escape, establishing themselves in positions of power and influence in various nations. So with that in mind, we're only going to be keeping one. Balal is barely on the page 5 minutes before he gets yeeted out the pattern by Moraine, so he's out. Samael's contribution to the plot doesn't go much further than convincing the Shido to split up, whereas Ravine is the catalyst for all the trouble in Camelin. He's the one responsible for Morghase's fall from grace and Elaine's subsequent battle for succession. So sorry Sammy, but it looks like there's a clear winner here. Not to mention, Ravine's defeat by a combined effort of Rand, Nynaeve and a collared Moghedien is a great sequence that absolutely should make it to the TV show. So far we have 4, and that means that there are only 3 seats left at the Dark One's table. This is where we have to start being harsh. Let's talk about Aginor and Balthal. The first 2 Forsaken we meet, and although they do a good job of making the Dark One's chosen seem intimidating and overpowered, they are disposed of pretty quickly. The ending of Eye of the World is already something I would change for the TV show. And judging by the trailer, it looks as if the adaptation is already combining elements from earlier books. So I doubt the confrontation at the Eye would be an exact regurgitation, if it happens at all. But what about their reincarnations, Osangar and Anangar? Both play similar roles as spies for the Black Tower and Saladar Aes Sedai. But ultimately, I feel like in both cases, the treacherous twist could easily be accomplished by ordinary Dark Friends, and the fact that they were Forsaken didn't really add much. Both are ultimately and unceremoniously burnt out of the pattern with Balefire and don't play a part in the last battle, so I'm giving these 2 a miss. That leaves only one male channeler left, and that is of course Asmodian, and yes, we're keeping Asmodian. Of course we're keeping Asmodian. How else is Rand going to learn to channel? His introduction as the Gleeman Yazin Natail travelling through the Aiel Waste is a great bit of foreshadowing and one of the more satisfying twists in the series. As we already know, Asmodian is a musician and a bit of a show-off. Having Rand being taught to channel by one of the Forsaken is such an interesting dynamic, and one that I wish we'd seen more of in the books, and hopefully can in the TV series. So, 2 spots left and 3 lovely ladies to choose from: Granddale, Moghedien and Masana. The first chosen to stay chosen is Granddale, and there are 2 main reasons for this. That's not a dirty joke, by the way. The first is Natron's Barrow, which is an equally devastating and important scene for showing Rand's increasing madness and ruthless nature. Destroying an entire castle filled with innocent civilians just to eliminate one Forsaken speaks volumes for the level of threat Rand believes Granddale poses. Not to mention, it is a great parallel for real World War tactics and example of how the toll of conflict between a few can have on the many. Simply put, this scene must stay. And while you could argue that you could substitute in another Forsaken in Granddale's place and the scene still have the same impact, that brings me on to reason number 2. Granddale's reincarnation Hassalam performs many plot-heavy actions towards the end of the series. Firstly, she's responsible for turning many of the Black Tower Ashaman to the Shadow, and then during the last battle she uses compulsion on the Great Captains to cause chaos for the forces of the light, allowing Mat to come forward as the predominant military leader. Granddale's vanity and indulgent nature also made her stand out amongst the Forsaken and would be hella fun to watch on the small screen. Does anyone else get hedonism bot from Futurama vibes?
How wonderfully decadent, and just as I was beginning to lose interest.
So that just leaves one position open, Moghedien or Mesaana. Is the answer obvious to anyone else? No offense to Mesaana, whose subterfuge in the White Tower was fun to read, but Moghedien has a much more active role with our other protagonists, especially her constant confrontations with Nynaeve. There's no way we're cutting the spider. She's also the only Forsaken left alive with all her wits intact at the end of the last battle. And this makes her ultimate fate as a Kola Dumani a fitting end to one of the most slippery villains in the series. So that's my answer to the question, what if you could only have 7 Forsaken? Ishamael/Moradin, Demon Dread, Landfire /Semirog, Ravine, Asmodian, Granddale/Hassalam, and Moghedien. Of course, there are probably hundreds of plot points that I never considered that make my choices impossible to imagine and would cause untold devastation to the series. And I would love to read them all down in the comments below, as well as your picks for the most crucial 7 Forsaken. If there are any other questions you would like me to attempt to answer in this series, then also please let me know. And as always, like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks guys, and I'll see you all next time.